Ignacio, 5 y empezamos.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back again to the Heredia webinars, informing you all the time with regards to law and as we move on. Today, we are going to talk about the non-lucrative visa. It is being a high demand, and we always expected this to happen because one of the legal scenarios because of Brexit. Today, I'm going to introduce you on one hand from Expats in Spain. We've got John Keel. Hello, John. Can you see us?
Hello. Hi there, everybody. Thanks for having me here today, Ignacio. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, John. John has been helping the expat community during all this TIE process. He's been very stressed and very busy, and I'm sure he's going to tell us a little bit of tips or recommendations for you if you're listening from abroad or even from here from Spain. On the other hand, we've got an expert in law, specialist on immigration, Pedro Heredia, partner of Pellicer Heredia. Hello, Pedro.
Hello. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon.
Pedro is going to explain to us all you need to know about non-lucrative visa. I'm proud to say Pedro has been dealing and the office has been dealing with the immigration issues for many years. We've been dealing with a lot of petitions from many other countries. And today it seems it's the turn for the UK to know how to process these petitions. Then we have another specialist, which is Carmen, immigration lawyer. Hello, Carmen.
Hello.
Carmen is a daily person, associate lawyer in Heredia, and she's the one who processed with us all the applications around the world. She could give us explanation later on the country she has experience, but she's the one on a daily basis. She deals with your applications in every single Spanish consulate in the world. Thank you, Carmen. And we've got Julia. I don't know if we can see Julia. Julia as well can you see us, Julia? The microphone is not working. Okay.
Hello, I'm here.
Hello, Julia. Julia has been helping us on a daily basis with the immigration, and she will give you, and now we're going to go with all these questions. Please start sending us all the questions over the panel. You have a chat. And then we could try to be quick, straight to the point, and answer to you specifically. Pedro, Carmen, and Julia and John will send you the email. Please, I will ask you, Pedro, Julia, and John, to put your email here just in case somebody might need to contact you direct because they don't have the time. Okay, now Juanfran is going to start with a video, and we're going to start cracking on non-lucrative visa. Over to you, Juanfran.
You're new to Spain and in need of legal help. When you're in a country that is foreign to you, you want someone who speaks your language, who understands you, and who will have an answer to all immigration and nationality matters. At Pellicer and Heredia, you can count on a specialist in international law and a multidisciplinary team that can help you handle all the necessary formalities. Do you want to take advantage of the Golden Visa program? We will help you obtain the residence visa for investors through the purchase of a property or via a business project that you're looking to develop in Spain. Do you need a residence permit? Obtain it for non-profit purposes or through family, work, study, research and training purposes. If, on the other hand, what you are looking for is a renewal, we take care of the whole process, so all you need to do is leave your fingerprint. We also deal with re-entry permits in the case that you want to leave and return to Spain. And of course, we help you obtain the certificate of registration as a European citizen, the foreigner's identity number, Spanish citizenship, and the certified translation of documents in all languages. Because at Pellicer and Heredia, we know that speaking your language is the only way to gain your confidence. Trust that we repay with 2 words: professionalism and commitment. Pellicer and Heredia, international lawyers.
Okay, thank you, Juanfran, very much for that, sharing that. Now I'm going to pass over to Pedro. He's an expert on immigration. He's been traveling around the world, meeting different Spanish consulate as well with all the issues that we had in the past. And he's going to give you now the tips for you to know what to lodge in order to start processing the non-lucrative visa. But as you know, you've got the work permit, non-lucrative visa, probably the golden visa, or different types of visa, which are in a different category. So over to you, Pedro.
Okay, thank you, Ignacio. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because it looks like that Eric is saying that we can't hear you, any of you. So if you can hear me, I suppose that everyone which is listening to us can hear us. Okay, well, thank you, Ignacio, for the presentation. It is true that, of course, well, I've been in the last years visiting some Spanish consulates regarding this specific visa with visa chiefs in, let's say, in China, which mostly has been in China, in Beijing, Guangzhou, in Shanghai, in the United States, in third countries in the world, in North Africa, and we're dealing with also with Russian clients. At the end, third countries, which are non-European Union countries. But now we have, of course, the situation because of the Brexit, that the United Kingdom is not anymore a European Union country, and now all the European Union citizens, all the British that were European Union citizens are not anymore European Union citizens. So this is one of the vehicles in order to be conducted in order to apply for residency in Spain. It's called, as you said, the non-lucrative visa, and mainly it is focused. It was created many years ago, and it was really created for retirement, for people who retire, have sufficient money to live in Spain without working. That's the key point. Anyone who applies for this should be, and I say that should be because we go further with the requirements. Someone who may want to retire in Spain and will not be permitted to work in Spain. So this is one of the key points really of this. Okay. Basically, Ignacio, the requirements that are applied in order to get the residency and the visa, non-lucrative visa, to enter in Spain and get the residence in Spain are, let's explain them briefly, and then we'll go with the questions and answers, and we will be more accurate and more detailed.
Perfect, yeah.
First of all, I mean, of course, you don't have, whenever you apply for that, you don't have to be illegal in Spain. You don't have to be in a situation where you are illegal in Spain. Or you don't have to have any file open against you where you have to be reported back to your country. So at the end, the situation is that you don't have to be illegal. Of course, main one, I mean, you don't have to be a European Union citizen in this case. Then the criminal records for the last 5 years, we need to show that there is no criminal records in the last 5 years. If someone has been living in the last 3 years in the United Kingdom, but the other 2 years, for example, in Canada, will have to show that 5 years, 3 in the United Kingdom and 2 in Canada, as an example. So last 5 years. I think, I mean, United Kingdom, in order to get these criminal records, there is a web page named ACRO, ACRO, which easily can be get, I suppose. One of the main information that needs to be given, and I think there are some questions, and we will follow that questions after, is regarding the money. What do I have to show? Which is the minimum requirements? Which is the minimum financial information I need to give into the Spanish consulate? Well, there are some minimum requirements, minimum figures, I would say, which, at least, for example, the principal is 27,115 euros. That's a minimum requirement for principal. For, if it's a couple, I suppose, it's 6,778, which at least is around 33,800 approximately. This is the minimum. And but how to show that? It is important. This is a subjective criteria. It is important to show that you have access to that money. It is important to show that you have that money guarantee that you're going to have it. For example, If you get this from a business, is something that the Spanish authorities will check that maybe this company is gonna get less income, you will get less income, at the end it will be rejected. So at the end, for example, pensions is fantastic, lump sum in a savings bank account where you have access, fantastic. Any other financial structure where you have access, fantastic. Can be mixed, can be any one of them, but the important issue is that you need to show that you have that money is guaranteed. It will be guaranteed in case it's paid monthly, and it is enough for the period of time that you are going to get great residency. The first year, and then the 2 more years, and then the 2 more years. We will get into that after that, because there are some questions about that, and we would like to clarify that point. And I would say the latest one is the medical certification. I'm going to read a paragraph that is required in order for a medical certification needed. It's a medical certification that needs to be written the following, and literally the following paragraph. It says, this health certificate states that Mr. or Mrs. does not suffer from any of the diseases that may have serious public health repercussions in accordance with what is stipulated by the International Health Regulations of 2005. So any medical made in UK, medical certification made in UK needs to have that. Do not have to be more or later than 3 months whenever you apply for. And well, basically is that if you get that certification in Spain, as it is a Spanish document, you don't need the full translation. All the documents which are not in Spanish need the full translation, and all the documents which is given from a public office, for example, the criminal records, needs to be apostille. It's an apostille, it's a stamped apostille from the Hague Convention from 1961. And I think, Ignacio, this is mostly the requirements in order to get and have access to the non-lucrative visa. But let's go through all the, to be accurate, the details, the situations, the different scenarios that may happen with these specific requirements. Of course, the access to public it needs to be shown that you have access to the public system or private insurance, which it mainly will be private insurance in most of applications, I assume that.
Okay, thank you, Pedro. Very good. Now, we've got on the panel here a lot of questions, but Pedro, I think we'll have to summarize for them, because Gavin is just asking if you could confirm the financial requirements for a couple. Could you say the figures again, Pedro, or what do you recommend, the minimum figures? Because I always insist to people, try not to be tight with documents.
For a couple, I mean, and it is said also in the Spanish consulate in London, it's 33,894. That's right, 33,894. This comes from some multiplication from some minimum amounts, times 4, times 12, and well, at the end, a principal one person is 27,115.20, and with a couple, with family members, is each family member 6,778 euros. So if we plus those figures, it ends into 33,894 euros.
Pedro, could I just rough figures? Can we just say a minimum per couple of 34,000 euros?
Is supposed to be the minimum, but as I said, it is a subjective criteria, of course. Some Spanish consulates in the world, they say, well, this is a minimum. We may not understand that you will be able to have that money or have access to that money. So it is important how to show that. It's extremely important how to show that. I always like to increase that figure, of course, in order to show that as much as possible.
What happens if I have 2 children? How does it work? Is it 500 euros per month per child, or how does it work?
Well, I mean, each family member is, as I said, per year, 6,778.
Per person.
Per person.
Right.
That's
so
each
it will be.
Member needs to show that a specific figure that is going to be able to have access to that year or to those 2 years. Think about that the first application, you get a residency for 1 year, but after 1 year, you need to renew it for 2 years. And on the renewal, you need to show that you are going to have those figures, as I said, double. Could be a lump sum, could be some savings, but also if you get some income, perfect for a pension, for example. And I would say that Spanish consulates, they like more people which wants to retire, is going to come here to Spain to live and have a quality of life and enjoy life, because this visa is not permitted to work, really. Even though, even though after 1 year you cannot change and apply for a work permit in case it's possible, but this visa specifically is focused for retirement people. Yeah.
So Pedro, we could say that 34,000 minimum financial means, obviously at least access to that amount. Then people could have pensions or a combination. I wouldn't recommend people to be tight with that because it's down to the criteria of the Spanish consulate. And they could, as Carmen was saying lately, if you are a young couple, they might consider you very tight and you might end up going to work here in Spain. But as we've been discussing, all of us, on this subject, bear in mind what we're trying to do is give you this information so you have enough to cover and be successful at the Spanish consulate. Now, what could happen is they will deny the application and you'll have to appeal that decision. And we normally recommend it to go through the courts instead of through the consulate. So Pedro, you were, so I think Asha was saying here, a family could be about 50,000 euros. I think it's a bit less for a 4-people family of 50,000 euros. Around my figures, I think it's 46, but it's always good to be. So with regards to the financial means,
even though it's really good. I mean, of course, the Spanish consulate in London is saying the minimum requirements, the minimum figures, which not all the Spanish consulate have done that. So they increase the criteria or the requirements. So it is, I would say it is accepted that if you fulfill all the requirements of those figures, it is important, as you said, and I mentioned, you need to show that you have access to the money and it's more or less guaranteed. It's a concept is the Spanish government wants you to stay in Spain and wants you to have access to the money in order to, and not to have the obligation to work in order to live in Spain.
Right, Pedro, another straightforward question. The medical insurance requirements, could you explain what kind of insurance or what does it cover? What do they have to have? Like having confirmation, a certificate from the insurance, basically saying that the treatment is guaranteed and all the health requirements while living in Spain is correct. Is that correct, Pedro? Is it the medical certificate from an insurance company will normally pass this exam, Pedro?
Well, the medical certification, what I mentioned is regarding the illness, but I think what you're saying is about the insurance that you need to bring in order to, I think, I mean, I haven't read that question or I listened to it very well, but I assume what needs to cover really is everything which is covered by the public system.
Okay, right. Basically, what Pedro was saying, you need a letter to say you are fine, you're okay from a health point of view. And then second, you need an insurance that covers you all your health issues while living in Spain. Okay, that's no problem. And normally what we do it at the same time all together. So I wouldn't worry if you are using a law firm. I think that they will help you with that if that's really stressing you. Otherwise, try to use one insurance of your confidence that covers this requirement. Pedro, I think we're going to go now straight on all these questions because we're having a lot of questions in the panel. Now, Angela is asking, if you stay in Spain longer than 183 days using the non-lucrative visa, are you liable for Spanish taxes? Which obviously, I should say that there is a double taxation treaty between UK and Spain, nothing to do with Brexit. It was signed 1977. And we will highly recommend you, Angela, to do tax planning on a personal and private conference, because the answer is you could stay longer, but you will need to use the and not pay tax, but you need to do the double taxation treaty. I don't know if Pedro wants to add something to it. I know it's very, very specific situation. In some cases, you could still stay more than 6 months, but still be taxed in the UK. But that's only if the double taxation treaty allows you to do so. Because some work employees, they allow you to be taxed in the UK. Now, if that's not the case, then you will need to be taxed in Spain because more than 183 days you're living in Spain. According to Article 3 of that double taxation treaty, the residents in Spain, everything worldwide assets being taxed in Spain, and therefore only exception you could do. We've been doing a lot of tax planning, and we highly recommend you, once you start doing the non-lucrative visa or any visa, try to do tax planning as well, because it really will answer your questions to your specific case. Okay, Pedro, shall we move on?
Yeah. Are you seeing me? Because it looks like I have some problems with my camera and the echo. It
Yes.
looks like there's an echo on my voice.
Yes, yes, I can see you now properly.
Okay.
There was an echo. Now,
Yeah,
Ian.
Perfectly. I mean, of course, if you live in Spain more than 183 days in Spain, you obtain residency. You live more than 183 days, then you are tax resident in Spain, and you must declare and pay tax according to the double taxation treaty in Spain and any other country in the world.
Pedro, Ian Clark is asking if the fact of having a house in Spain helps for the non-lucrative visa.
No, what it helps, I mean, having assets that at the end, in the non-lucrative visa, you need to show that you have enough money to live in Spain, and you cannot show, okay, I have a property in UK, I'm going to sell it in the future. That does not count at all. What it counts, and some Spanish consulates in the world, I would say, for example, United States consulates, most of them, I would say all of them, they require some lease contract here, or you have a property in order to, you need to show that you have a place to live in Spain. Could be a lease, could be a property that you have already bought because you did it before. But having a property in UK do not help as an asset in order to get more arguments in order to obtain, or it is not going to be included in the value of the sufficient money to live in Spain. Will not.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Pedro. I don't know if John wants to add something so far, or shall we just move on, John?
I think at this point in time, it's good to continue because there's a lot of questions there.
Okay, right. Okay, Gavin has asked about the financial requirements, which I believe Pedro has been going through as a married couple, as an individual, and even if you are per child, to add another 6,000 euros a year per person extra in the family. Now, Jeffrey is asking, can I apply for an S1 in the UK, and will this be enough to satisfy Spain for healthcare requirements, Pedro? What do you think on that?
I think John will be better if you could answer, John, this question.
About the S1, John?
So yeah, in terms of the S1, obviously that's a transfer of healthcare from the United Kingdom into the Spanish system. It's generally used for residencia applications, but again, in terms of whether you could use the S1 or whether you would even be at the age to use the S1 for a non-lucrative visa is the million-dollar question, whether you have the financial proof there and whether you are of age to get the S1, because the S1 does need to be the permanent transferable S1. Anything that is not the permanent S1, of which there are very specific categories and groups of people, certainly cross-frontier workers may be able to get a temporary S1 for 1 year. That is not acceptable for the purposes of normal residencia.
Thank you, John. Very good. Yeah, actually, I would highly recommend to have themselves insurance in place and work on an S1, as John said, permanent if possible, and it could always if in case it's useful for you in the future, as long as it's compatible in Spain. So you will have the private and probably the S1 for the social security. But yes, I agree with John. Yeah, John, yeah, go on.
Just to add something there, it is purely for healthcare, the S1. The document, there are other documents with different letters that would involve social security elements or benefits. So the S1 purely focuses on healthcare from the United Kingdom. It's a transfer in a portable document that transfers the healthcare.
Okay, right. Thank you, John. Now, Paul Tyler is asking specific question here. Pedro, let's say my wife and I live in France and have a French residency, not citizenship. We both have British passport, but have not lived in the UK for 15 years. I see from your website the application for non-lucrative visa have to show proof of residency in the UK, which obviously we cannot do. Is there a procedure that we should follow? In addition, the website shows that for two of us, the income requirement is what we already discussed for 1 year, the almost 34,000 for 1 year. And the problem, as we said, 68,000 for 2 years. If we could show that we have 70,000 euros in the bank, would this be sufficient? We have a yearly income of more than the minimum amount, but some of it has to be taxed in the UK. We cannot afford 500,000 euros to buy property, but if we had one worth, say, 300,000, would the income requirement be reduced? We have S1 health cover in France and have been told by the S1 office in the UK that we qualify for an S1 valid in Spain. Is this sufficient to meet the requirements for a Spanish system? Pedro, I think we need to go one per one, isn't it, Pedro?
Yeah, I mean, well, regarding the figures that is said, I mean, it's correct. 33,894. This is what we said before. Exactly, that's the minimum again. But of course, if it says in the chat, 70,000 euros in the bank will be this sufficient? Yes, of course. I mean, at least as you have a lump sum or income or both of them, but you guarantee that you have that money and you have access to that money, that will be enough. What is important is to show that you have that money is going to cover the period of time you're going to have. That 70,000 euros, whenever you're going to renew it, of course, will cover those 2 years. And of course, if you have also some income that it is over the requirements, that the minimum requirements that are set, well, that's perfect. You will obtain, or this requirement you will fulfill, of course, totally. And regarding you have a house, this is one of the questions also, Ignacio, that is, what if they have a house, will the income requirement be reduced? No.
No.
The answer is no. I mean, in case that you have some assets abroad that could be converted into euros, it does not mean that you have access to that money. That's the word. Will you have access to have sufficient money and in order to be able to not to work in Spain? Yeah, that's right. Regarding the S1, of course, this is, as I said, John, the $1 million question. In my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, but in my opinion, as they are living in France, they are getting this access to health from United Kingdom right now as a third country, shouldn't be valid in Spain. This is my question right now, even though this may verify in the near future. But I don't know, John, what is your opinion? But in my opinion, I would go straight forward for private insurance, and after a year on the renewal, maybe to check if it's possible to get access to the public system.
In terms
over to you, yeah.
In terms of the S1 and what you've just said, if the United Kingdom is prepared to issue that S1 again for the purposes of Spain, then that should be a valid document. But what we have to clarify here, because this process of the non-lucrative visa starts in the United Kingdom, i.e. at the Spanish consulate, what we need to have confirmed is whether they are accepting that document for this process. That is the $1 million question in my mind.
Right. Yeah, I think in following seminars or webinars, we could just update you on how the situation is. I know Carmen is being in touch with the Spanish consulate recently in the UK. They are already in touch with us. So it's good because their internal offices are open and they are giving us the opportunity to liaise with them to start doing the applications. But I think, Carmen, correct me if I'm wrong, they will not open the appointments until, I think you said 16th of February. Is that correct, Carmen?
Las citas ahora no están disponibles hasta el 2 de marzo incluso.
Right, so the 2nd of March is where they will start issuing appointments. So you, with all the paperwork, previous arrange an appointment, you could start lodging through the application. Okay, so that application for them to review all your existing paperwork, and after an average of a month, you'll get a resolution saying, yes, you're entitled to live in Spain for at least 1 year. But please bear in mind, with these non-lucrative visa, you need to stay more than 6 months living in Spain. I know there is somebody here asking whether they could come in and out. but as long as you spend more than 183 days in Spain, I think the answer is yes. Correct, Carmen? Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
It's correct.
Perfect. Right. So as you said, the S1 is a question. At this stage, I know the UK is going to be overwhelmed with petitions. Okay, and I wouldn't think if somebody doesn't want to risk the chance of being rejected, I wouldn't even lodge the S1 to start with. If you really want to get it sorted. Okay, I think this is a very, very specific question. You could give a try, but there is nothing guaranteed here, you know. And just bear in mind that a lot of things are on the criteria of the consulate, even though that decision could be appealed before them within 1 month time after the resolution is granted. And then you have another month time after that's been rejected again. You could go through the Madrid High Court, which obviously will take a year and it will cost you more money because you need to have a barrister, court runner, etc., etc. Carmen has been dealing as well with a lot of court cases in the past for many other citizens, and we are very comfortable that the judicial system works very good. The only problem is it's slow for your requirements. So if you really want to go to Spain and you want to do it straight, fast and quick, I will recommend you to at least comply with the requirements for not just to test. Okay, we're going to move on because time is flying here, and we're going to go with Mike. What level of detail is required in respect of one's assets when demonstrating you have sufficient funds? Pedro, this Mike is asking as well about financial means again. Could you just give us some tips here? What would you recommend?
Let's focus on like two answers. I mean, as much as you can demonstrate you have sufficient money to live in Spain, those requirements you fulfill, you don't have to show everything. At least you show something that, of course, is over that minimum requirements. Perfect. That's not meaning the rule does not say that you have to show absolutely everything. That's not correct. I mean, that's if you could, perfect, but you don't have to. I mean, you can show yes, but of course the detail of what the information that you're giving to the Spanish consulate, I mean, needs to demonstrate that you have sufficient money to live, which means you need to detail some figures, some numbers, and at the end, some dates where you have those numbers, those figures in whatever bank account or financial institution. I mean, that accurate, that detail needs to be given and shown and demonstrate and be accurate on the figures and the dates and the bank statements. All these needs to be shown correctly. Of course, there is no like I said, like a specific rule saying how many I mean, it's just to show well, as much information, as much detail as can be possibly done, but you don't have to show everything. But having said that, whenever you become resident in Spain, and you, as it's been said before, you will become resident, you will become tax resident. And if you become tax resident and you have assets abroad outside Spain, which are over 50,000 euros, you need to inform the tax authorities. It's not a tax, it's just an informative application that you have those assets outside.
Okay.
You can say anything in the application, but after you can say that, no problem. But that kind of, I mean, the details demonstrate that you have access to as well.
Okay, thank you, Pedro. Let's move on. Gavin is asking whether we'll need, will there be a need to sit Spanish driving test if living in Spain with non-lucrative visa? Yes, the answer is yes. Unless we reach an agreement, UK and Spain, that is the way we are. At the moment, we are at the same situation with Americans, with Canadian, with Australian. We are pretty much in the same situation. So the answer is yes here, Gavin. Then Graham is asking, does it exclude remote working? And does it exclude management of a UK company if the management is carried out during trips to the UK? I don't know what Graham means, excluding remote working. I think, Pedro, remote working probably is not for the non-lucrative visa, is it? Because non-lucrative visa...
That's a good question, and it's subjective, because this question has been said. We don't know what will be probably the Spanish consulate criteria, because this is going to be a criteria that we don't know. What I can say is that from other countries or Spanish consulates, that this criteria is mostly rejected, which means that at the end you have, because as I said in the beginning, this specific visa is a vehicle for retirement people, so do not have to come here to Spain to work. Maybe it's amended, maybe in the future it's more flexible. With the British or Spanish consulate in the UK is flexible interpretation, and maybe it is just not to work in Spain, but for the works and employment which is in Spain. If it is remote working, of course, it's not getting any access to the employment market in Spain, so it is not really something which you should be forbidden. But as I said, some of the Spanish consulates in the world is rejected. Notice that when you apply for non-lucrative visa, you apply for, you make the application, and in most of the situations, you have a personal appointment. It's like a test. They ask you some questions. I don't think will be probably the same with the Spanish consulate. It will not be that situation, but it is something that it is always asked. Are you going to work in Spain? Are you going to apply for working in Spain after 1 year? Are you going to work remotely? Well, in question is normally rejected. At this time, we will see what is going to be the requirements or the interpretation and the criteria about the Spanish consulate. I would like to say yes, because it's not going to be part of the Spanish market. Really, you will be working remotely. So in my understanding, will be able to be applied, but the rule says really no, not to work.
Yeah, if we go straight into the law, is a visa that is not allowed for working. But here Graham has got a good point. He's working remotely for his UK limited company, and he even here's Pedro. Does exclude management of a UK company if the management is carried out during trips to the UK? Well, if you do it over there, obviously there is nothing that anybody could say. You're not working in Spain, but working remotely from here. At the end of the day, is how they're going to control these things. That's a different matter, But the law is very strict, saying you're not allowed to work in Spain. But it's a good point, Pedro, isn't it? We're going to have a lot of cases with COVID.
I assume, in my opinion, is gonna. There are some resolutions by the court, really, that is being approved this way, really. But even though I assume that in this consulate with this criteria will win really this interpretation and will be able to include people who works remotely but do not have access to the Spanish employment market. Which in order to be protected, in order to say, well, if you are not going to work. But having said that, at the end you need to show that you have access to money, that you have also a savings and lump sum, which means that if you just have income from your employment, that will be rejected.
Let's move on, Pedro, because we have still, I think, at least another 35 questions here. And the application, does it have to be in Spanish language, Pedro, or it can be done over there in the UK in English and we have it translated? I don't know what Carmen wants to say here. The application, Carmen, whenever you lodge it through, is it possible to do in English as well?
Los formularios pueden estar, o sea, los facilitan en inglés y español.
Right, so it's both languages. She's saying that they provide in both languages, English and Spanish. So you shouldn't have, Jeffrey, any problem with it. Sandrine is asking, is it possible to spend more than 183 days in Spain and not to be tax resident in Spain? Well, we cover that as well. Sandrine, it's better to discuss it privately with us or with any lawyer and tax advisor that you choose about all the implications, because there are a lot of questions we need to do, whether you are a civil service in the UK, whether you running a company in the UK, whether, there is a lot of things in order to study your specific application or situation with the double taxation treaty. But technically, you can spend, there is a possibility of more than 6 months and still be taxed in the UK, but that's only recognized with the double taxation treaty, okay? Now let's move on. Sharon is asking, what would be the best way for a retired married couple to apply for a residential? One of whom has an Irish passport, the other with a UK passport. A non-lucrative visa or for the Irish passport holder applies for a residential. When they say residential, I think it's a TIE for Europeans. And the UK passport holder applies through marriage. I agree. Pedro, will you please explain? I know John has been doing a lot of them. I think probably the perfect answer will be to get the Irish residency and then with a marriage certificate, get the family member of a European citizen. That's much faster, easier, less requirements, less hassle. So that's ideal, to be honest, Sharon. So unless somebody else wants to say something else, yeah, John, would you like to say something?
In terms of what you've just said there, that is exactly the approach I would take. To put somebody through the reverse of that scenario is too long and too complicated.
Yeah.
They have the European protection through the Irish passport holder. It's the perfect scenario for a straightforward green little card, European citizen residencia, and then bring on the back of that the other partner who is the British citizen.
Great, thank you, John. Chris Finn is asking that they're saying they're not entitled for the S1 yet. Is there any way we can get onto the Spanish healthcare system? Well, there is a way to join, but you need to be 1 year at least living in Spain. Okay. Now the situations for the visa requirements, you need private health. Okay. Different thing is whether you want to join the Spanish system to pay extra and to have cover on health, public health, and the private. But definitely, Chris, in order to apply for the non-lucrative visa, you need to have an insurance, private insurance. After 1 year, you can make an application here and pay another flat fee. But again, that will be our initial recommendation, okay, for peace of mind. Then we've got Ayesha. How about a family of 4, 2 adults and 2 children? I think we did cover that. Basically, we'll need exactly the same paperwork, but the financial means, it will be like Pedro said, 6,000 euros per child per year, approximately. So as they said here before, about Yesha said about 50,000 euros and disposal. Okay, so you cannot have it tied in a property. You cannot have it on a guarantee bond that you cannot touch it. You need to have free access to this money. Okay, now we're going to move on. Ian Clark is saying, is that in saving or annual income? We're always talking, Ian, annual income. Okay, so 27 for 1, 30 for 2. And then you need to add 6,000 extra for the next child and another 6 per year, 6,000 euros per child. Okay. Joy is asking here, is this amount extra to owing a property? The answer is yes. Having a property is not a requirement for the non-lucrative visa. It's only a requirement for the golden visa, and you have it over 500,000 euros in Spain. I think Pedro could explain later on what are the difference with the golden visa. Pedro, could you say something in 1 minute?
Yeah,
we're running out of time.
About, I mean, what has been asked by Joey, I mean, of course, I already said, I mean, is the amount that we need to be shown, and owning a property will not help. It just helps if you own a property in Spain, in order to show that you have a place to live, a place that you rent or you buy, in this case, that you own a property. Golden visa, I mean, the difference is really, I mean, the requirements are exactly mostly the same, which is not being illegal in Spain, not being EU citizen, the criminal records, the sufficient money to live, the access to public or the private health system. Those requirements are mainly the same. But apart from that, you need to invest. Yeah, you need to show that you have invested in. There are different kind of investments. The minimum, I would say, the highest application is for investment on property, which is 500,000 euros investment minimum. There are other ones for 1 million euros, including also 2 million euros for financial structures or debt or Spanish companies or big projects. But the minimum is 500,000 euros on property, as has been said by Joy. So if you have a property and you may want to maybe invest some other money, perfect with the golden visa. With the golden visa, the difference also with the non-lucrative visa is that you are allowed to work in Spain if you want to. You are allowed to work with you and any other family member if with old age. I mean, will be able to work in Spain, and you don't have to be resident to renew it. Now you cannot be, if you don't want to be resident in Spain, come here sometimes to Spain. And what you need to do to renew is to maintain the investment. So whenever you renew, you need to show, oh, the investment that I made a year ago with this property, I'm maintaining it. Or maybe I sold it and I bought another one. Or maybe I sold it and I invested on the bank deposits, for example, with higher amount. But you need to show that you maintain, that you have an investment or one of the requirements as an invest on the golden visa. That are mainly, Ignacio, the differences. The non-lucrative visa, you are obtaining a residency. You have to be resident in case that you want to renew it for the following 2 years. And after another following 2 years, you need to also show that you've been resident. So those are the differences really between the golden visa and the non-lucrative visa.
Okay, Pedro, thank you. Let's move on. I will just add to say that golden visa, it's a good thing. You come in and out as many times as you wish, and you don't necessarily need to be tax resident, Pedro. So that's probably,
exactly.
If they
you
could,
have to be resident, and you don't have to be tax resident. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, if they've got the opportunity to do it for a golden visa, and it's very important they do it because they need to do it in a specific way, only in one name of the family member, and then the other ones will be beneficiaries. If you've got the chance to come to Spain to buy a property over 500,000 euros, that golden visa will be much easier and doesn't imply so many things, and it's not that strict on tax. Neither on requirements. Okay, but the non-lucrative visa, the good thing is you don't need to spend any money on property. You could even live on rental accommodation. The only thing you need to have financial means in place, and you are able to support yourself and your family, isn't it, Pedro? What would you like to say?
Let me add one thing regarding the golden visa, because all will be able to be shown and right now to prove any investment on property. In this case, we are talking about property. After 2013. So imagine, let's say, a couple that have invested in a property some years ago, let's say 2017 or 18 or less, and they bought a property which is 1 million euros, for example, and they are still non-resident in Spain, but right now they are thinking about, well, about this situation. If it's 1 million euros, there is no problem because half of €1 million, 500,000 euros, each one will cover that. But let's put the example that, what if the property is 550,000 euros value, and both, as a couple, as a marriage, have bought the property? Are they allowed to apply for golden visa, both of them, or not? And it is important to check what they said in the deed regarding the marriage, how to say, the marriage agreement.
Regime, yeah?
Exactly, regime, economic regime. If it's separately, if it's everything jointly. If it's jointly, it's perfect. That's the perfect scenario. If it's separated, then we have something to do, or we have some problems with that. So it is, if it's jointly, if it's all together, I mean, all the assets are together. So one of the spouses will apply for golden visa, and the other one would be a family member. But this is important. Whenever, if someone is going to invest and apply for golden visa, it's extremely important. I mean, unless the value of the property is more than 1 million euros, so there is nothing really to worry about, because both of them will get it.
That's good, Pedro. Good advice. Now, I've got a question here, Pedro. Is there a strict requirement that the application has to be made in person in United Country? Yes.
Yeah.
Or
yes.
can I apply was in Spain?
Yes. I mean, there are some situations that needs to be perfectly justified, that you can act and power some representative to do that, but needs to be done personally.
Right. Let's move on because we're running out of time. Ayesha is asking, how's the minimum requirement to stay for residency? We already covered that. Minimum on non-lucrative visa is 6 months, 184 days. For golden visa, you don't need to stay here a specific time. Okay, we have Susan. Does the 27K have to be in the bank, Pedro, or can it be a salary of your work remotely and you are in a pensioner? Again, we are having here with the problem with the money side. What would you like to say, Pedro?
If it's, I mean, in my, this is, I mean, it is subjective criteria, and in my criteria is to have access to some money that is guaranteed. If it's a pension, it's fantastic. If it's a lump sum where you are getting some money and you have access to that lump sum, perfect. If it's a salary or if it's some income that you're getting from a company, that maybe 6 months later, that company is going to enter in a bankruptcy or the turnover is going to be reduced and you will get less income, the Spanish authorities will see that this situation may happen and will not count that values or that numbers as you think. Or maybe they will just reject it in case that is. So salary, I mean, even though you work, I think I said that, but I would like to clarify that. If you get a salary, a remote work, this is not really the visa. Unless you have some other income or some other lump sum that covers that year or those 2 years.
Okay, Pedro, Michael has a question here. When showing proof of finances on the application, do they want to see bank statements with income? As with us, we have pensions and small property business, which produces more than the required amount for the year. Or do we want to see a lump sum that we have in the bank, which will cover the yearly amount? Also, consulates abroad are accepting applications already at the present moment, as we have emailed for an interview in London and we have not received a reply. Pedro, will you explain something about this?
The question has been said. I mean, I think Carmen and yourself said, I mean, until the 2nd of March will not be available.
Applications lodged. Okay, so just wait, Michael, for the 2nd of March to make your appointment. And Pedro, when showing proof of finance question, yeah.
I mean, of course, bank statements are absolutely perfect. I mean, you show there is some you show some income from period income, normal income, monthly income from
guaranteed. Yeah, Pedro.
Guaranteed lump sum of money of savings is fantastic. If you say, would I choose any one of them? In my opinion, in my recommendation, I would say, well, show both of them, perfect. If one of them just fulfill the requirements, well, each one of them will be enough. But in my opinion, my recommendation is just to add all of them and show it to the Spanish authorities.
Okay, Pedro,
we've got. As I said, and it's important. Once you become tax resident and tax resident, you need to inform tax office assets abroad.
Pedro, Richard is asking, you already went through the difference between non-lucrative visa and golden visa. Now, they are asking, does this apply just to Spain or the whole Europe? So with the golden visa, Pedro.
The golden visa, you have access to the Schengen area. Absolutely, yes. I mean, I think
it's a good question. And what about with the non-lucrative visa, Pedro?
Yeah, exactly the same. And once you become resident in Spain, you will have access to the Schengen area. Absolutely. Yeah. And the criteria says that is those 90 days on that 180 days on those countries that you Schengen area. Yeah.
Okay. Jenny is asking whether you will still need private medical insurance. My understanding at the moment, we already covered that. My understanding is for the non-lucrative visa or golden visa, yes, you need an insurance. Okay. Whether you could just swap it later on, that's a different issue because you wouldn't be able to join Social Security office with a convenio especial until you've been living in Spain for 1 year. But I wouldn't do it to start with an S1 and to lodge the application. I mean, you could try, but it could be rejected. Okay, Jenny. Alexander is asking, does the money for a couple have to be in Spanish bank, Pedro? Or could it be in the UK or anywhere in the world?
Well, in my opinion, no. I mean, anywhere, really is anywhere in the world. Of course, you need to convince, really, this is like a matter of proof, is you need to convince the Spanish authorities that you have, that money is real and you have access to that money. If it's the money, if it's in Spain, of course, it gives more credibility. But having said that, there is not really, we have not seen any specific problems really if the money is in Spain or outside Spain. It really is anywhere in the world that you have access. This is what you need to prove and demonstrate.
Mm-hmm. Now, Gary is asking whether there is a minimum of days we need to stay in Spain with his visa. For the non-lucrative visa, the answer is yes, minimum 6 months. For the golden visa, no. Okay. Yes, during 1 year, correct. Then, as Pedro said, you have 1 year on the non-lucrative, then you renew for another 2. And it's good to bring the point here. You will need to prove these double eventually, and then another 2, and then 5, which will be the permanent. The permanent is quite more straightforward. They don't ask you anymore for the financial means, which is good. Is good. But the 1, 2, and 2, you always have to have money in the bank. I think the 2 years probably is a bit more sacrifice for everybody to have double. Sitting in the bank or proving financial means, isn't it, Pedro?
That's right.
Right. Susan, if you don't have 34,000 to access, but your bank account for years has been around, say, 10,000, or that your income from retirement is at least 3,500 per month guarantee. Well, I think, Susan, if you have 3,500 euros per month guarantee, I think you're fine because there is no risk you're going to run out of money while living in Spain, which is the main point, that they are not willing people
That's right.
allowing them to come over to Spain with no financial means. That's the whole point of this non-lucrative visa, you know. Okay, we've got Greg, I think he's American. The consulate in Houston, Texas requires that I submit a 12-month lease or property purchase agreement with my non-lucrative visa application. With current travel restriction, any recommendations, Pedro, or insight on meeting that requirement?
That's a fantastic question, Greg. I mean, because we have some experience in the past, I would say, weeks or months about some American clients. And of course, this requirement is true. I mean, they say, well, you have to submit a 12-month list. You are not in Spain. You are, in this case, in Texas, in Houston. And, well, you need to, at the end, you need to get a contract, sign a contract for a 12 months period. In that contract needs to be set some specifications about being able to authorize to certificado de padrón. But it's true, I mean, requires that. And what if you haven't bought a property? What if you are not able to see a property? Well, in my opinion, what you should do is just to rent a property. How to do it? By photos, by pictures, by estate agent, sign a contract, and with the specific conditions that whenever you come to Spain, so you have a place to whenever you can. So whenever you can, having the flexibility in order to reject it in case that you don't like when you come and you don't like the place or you don't like the property or whatever. But you need to show and bring into the Spanish consulate a contract, a fully contract and real contract, because it is not just the contract. You need to show also the land registry information where it shows who is the owner. And at the end, of course, in the rental contract, it needs to show the owner and the signature of the owner, which sometimes is checked in order to avoid any fraud. But it's something that it gives more effort for you to find an estate agent, to find someone who rents a property, to sign a contract, maybe instruct a lawyer to check all the contract conditions, and sign a contract really. But in my opinion, in these cases, what you need to do is to have a flexibility, even though the rental contract law gives you this opportunity to whenever you come to Spain, avoid. It will incur some costs. I suppose, yes, it will incur some costs. But this is something that you need to show. This is the way to do it, and this is the document that you need to show.
Right. Okay. We're running out of time here. We're having, I'm still counting a lot of questions, 50 messages still, and we're running out of time. Pedro, we'll be grateful if John, Pedro, Carmen, Julia could send your email just in case they want to send you specific questions. I know the best thing to do. I will highly recommend you here to do 2 things at homework. Number 1, do always tax planning. It's important for you to know what you're facing, so there is any issues in the future. And in the same time, always seek independent legal advice. Is very important, so you're in good hands. Okay, everything could be done nowadays, video conference and online. I know a lot of people who are watching their stack, as Greg said, stack in the States, stack in the UK. I think probably from March, you will be able to come over to Spain, only the ones who are holding a residency permit. Okay, I think. At the moment, only the one who have residency permit can come. But in March, I still think it will not be that quick, Pedro. I think COVID is still, they are extending the measures, but it's a very good time. As advice, I will tell you to start putting paperwork in order, start preparing everything. All this paperwork takes for a long time. Probably you needed 2 months, 3 months, 1 month to gather all paperwork, another month for the application, and then to have the flight tickets to come over to Spain. And we didn't talk about what we need to do later on. Once you come over to Spain, we will take you to the Extranjería office with the fingerprint, okay? Or you could, through whoever you do, make the applications, because you need to do the fingerprints and get your credit card signed TRE for non-Europeans, okay? That will be valid for 1 year. And one is about to expire. After 1 year, you've got a period of time to renew it. And that will be the time for you to have it ready for another 2 years. So for those who are preparing to come over to Spain now, I would recommend you just to prepare for 1 year, 2 years, and probably another 2 years, okay? I don't know if John wants to say anything else, because we are about to leave the session today. We probably will do another webinar, John, because there's still a lot of questions, a lot of things. Anything else, John, we missed?
I don't think you've missed anything. The information is there, and obviously they have our contact details if they've got any very specific questions. Again, I'd agree with you. I think it needs another webinar because the interest is so immense.
Yeah. John is he's a Spanish and English translator. He lives here in Spain. John, if you want to just leave your email just for people to know, he works as well for Brexpat in Spain. You could go on Facebook and see what they do. They've been fighting for citizens' rights very hard, and they've been helping the expat community a lot. So thank you for that, John. I would like to thank Carmen as well for the daily basis work that she does for all our clients and instant information to us. Julia, Pedro, thank you very much. And we're going to leave you with a video. And if you need to see us in the future, just send us an email. We'll organize a private video conference, or we will just join us in our next webinar. We'll try to help you and give you updates as and when we find more things out with all these immigration issues. Juan Fran, over to you.
Trust is vital when you're in another country. If you want to buy a home, set up business relationships, or apply for a residence permit, you need to be able to count on the best independent legal aid. Pellicer and Heredia is an international firm of lawyers with over 20 years' experience and one single aim: for you to live at ease in Spain. In order to give you a clear, streamlined, and fast response, we work with a cross-disciplinary team of professionals specializing in the main legal fields: civil law, foreigners' affairs, business law, tax and financial law, and international law. And to ensure that you're kept informed and up to date with everything, we have 6 offices on the Eastern Coast. Whether you're from here or abroad, we will always stand by you and speak your language. Our relationship is based on openness, professionalism, and a commitment to finding legal solutions in your best interests and for your peace of mind. Pellicer and Heredia, international lawyers.